at the end of the day, you're judged on your record, right? Your
Mm.
record, it is what it says it is, right? So, but what we have to do is just control what we can control, and as our players can control their effort
Mhm.
and their consistency in how they play, and that's what we try to focus on with those guys is don't stack bad days. So when we practice, we've got to stack good days
Mhm.
and not have back-to-back bad days. Sometimes you're gonna have a bad day, but you can't have back-to-back bad days. All right. So if we continue to do that and improve, then we get out there on game day and we stack good plays back to back, you probably are going to win a lot of those games.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Unwired Appalachia. It's our football previews are underway. You might be seeing some of these out right now. I think we got one out right now. Hopefully, you'll see all the coaches, and there'll be a QR code when the magazine comes out. So you can be looking at the magazine, click on that QR code, and watch their interview. So you're a little bit more in depth than just our regular season preview. But with that being said, we got Pike Central coach Chris Slone. Welcome back. This is, I think, your second time joining us. This time you probably got a little bit more knowledge of your team since the kickoff's not too far away. Just kind of talk about how things are going early on, I guess.
Yeah. Last time we talked, had just had the opportunity to meet the team, and talk to them for a short time. So now we're kind of getting the wheels on the road a little bit and seeing kind of how the team's going to progress and seeing who's going to be playing for us. And so far, I feel like I've liked what I've seen from our kids. They've worked really hard. The time I've been there in the off season, the commitment's been there. From the returning players. Uh, Coach Varney said it's been one of the better off season programs. I think so. I think the kids are excited. Um, we're putting in the work. We're trying to build something. So it's it takes time. The numbers aren't exactly what we want, um, but I don't want to take anything away from the kids we've got. The kids we've got are excellent players.
Absolutely.
Our starters and the players we've got, the backup rotational players are as good as I think anybody around. We just have them, as long as we can stay healthy with the numbers we have, we'll be a good team.
Yeah, and you mentioned Coach Varney. I'm sure you're leaning on him a little bit because he's probably got to see these kids a little bit in action a little bit more than you. You probably see them in practice. You and him kind of talking about where guys will fit if you want to move somebody around. How's that been going? Like, just because you're still I'm sure you're still in the learning stages, I would assume, but you're probably getting a feel for you where you want guys. Maybe they might have played a position, somebody might have played a position that you say, hey, maybe we'll try them here instead of there. Any of that stuff going on, or is it just kind of seeing where everybody fits, I guess?
Yeah. Coach Varney's been a really big help in a lot of ways, especially with understanding those players, seeing those players in the past, understanding how they have fit in different scenarios. He's seen those kids all the way back to middle school. He remembers a lot of those kids and how they played in those offenses. So there's a lot of different systems he's seen these kids in, and it's given him a lot of perspective on, maybe this kid can play here and here. So we've been trying to teach some of those kids some overlapping skill sets so that they can maybe be more versatile when they do rotate in and things like that. So
Yeah,
been a
and
big help.
yeah. Sorry about that. I
No,
cut
you're
you off. But at Pike Central, usually there's some pretty good linemen up there. I mean, is that
mm.
kind of where y'all are starting at with what you want to do up front on offense and defense? Because usually you got some pretty big guys up there who got some skill and they really know what they're doing. I thought last year, that team had a pretty good offensive line, defensive line, and they really seemed to come on late in the season. Just kind of talk about your lines if you can. If you want to start with offense, then talk about some defense maybe, because usually when you're talking about lines at this level, they play both ways. So that's usually why I
Yeah.
ask about both.
Yeah, and our guys do. Our defensive line is, when you look at the way most teams want to build, an odd front 3-4 defensive line,
Mm-hmm.
we've got those kind of guys. You've got those big guys who can move. Josh Adkins is probably going to play our nose. on our defense, and he's a big two-gap player, strong, moves as good as anybody I've seen at his size. Skylar Ray is an incredibly talented offensive and defensive lineman with a lot of length. He can play really well. Um, you know, Shane Smith at center is consistent, and he's like a bulldog down there. He plays really hard. Cody Clark is a very skilled player and really helps us there. So I know I'm forgetting some people, but those are ones, off the top of my head that just, like you said, you don't expect to come into a program, coming off a losing season and have that kind of returning line play. It makes a big difference. You can do a lot with that.
Yeah, and then, I don't know where you're going to play. Just talk about Jonah Hicks, and he's one of those special athletes. You can put him anywhere. Just me covering him in high school football. I think he's played receiver, some linebacker, some quarterback. He's run the ball. He's caught the ball. He kind of does everything.
Yeah.
Have you kind of figured out what to do with him yet, or is this just game to game, situation to situation, or is he going to be back at quarterback?
Yeah. We believe he's going to be at quarterback. He's been. We actually have, him at quarterback. We also have had Brett Adkins at every position just about, but he's kind of that relief quarterback right now for us. A player who could give us some rotational play as like a running quarterback. But Jonah has had that leadership for us since I've gotten there. He's been, the poised player for us, I guess you could say. He's got that maturity that you just don't usually see from kids at his age. Great player, great athlete. We went to that EKU 7-on-7, last weekend, and he, we had coaches from other teams say, "Gosh, that got a big quarterback. That's a big quarterback." So not only is he a good athlete, he's got some size on him. He's been in the weight room, and he's put on some size. So there's a lot we can do with him, and there's a lot we plan to do with him. But at the same time, you gotta protect your quarterback. So
Absolutely.
that's a big thing. We're gonna make sure we take care of him, but I think he's gonna put us in a good position to be successful.
Yeah, last couple of years it seems like Pike Central's had several really good running backs. You got guys who strictly running, can catch out of the backfield. Just kind of talk about what your backfield's looking like this year. I'm not sure who's back for you, but I mean to you they're new anyway, so I guess that doesn't really matter for you. So just kind of talk about the backfield, I guess.
Yeah, we have we actually have a pretty good rotation of backs. I mean, we have just off the top of my head, Cam Smith, who was I think a freshman for us last year, tough, and very skilled. He can catch the ball. He can do a lot of different things. He may not always look like a traditional running back, but he's tough as nails. Little Mike Allstott, I feel like. And then you've got Tyler Thompson for us, who's going to be coming back off an injury and is just a smooth runner and also a tough player and also can catch. So versatile, and that's good because we need a little bit of that rotation in those running back spots. And for our slot receiver and wing type backs, I guess you could call them backs or receivers depending on how we use them. You've got Brett Adkins will play there most likely.
Yeah.
Cooper Tyler will also play in that spot. Cooper Slone will play there. And he's smaller, but he's tough and he can do everything for us. Good blocker.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned some of your receivers and that too. Just mention the other receivers. Now I guess we'll have the offense pretty much covered. So
Yeah.
just kind of talk about some of these other receivers that fans can look out for. I mean, last year there was some playmakers back there.
Yeah, and we have a lot of different body types for us at receiver. You got your big body, almost like kind of like your big tight end type body. So like Aiden Harrison for us has really come on and done a really good job. Looked really good in our 7-on-7s, and he can slide down to tight end sometimes if we put a tight end set in. So that way we don't have to take him off the field. We can leave him on the field. Jackson Camp is a really good athlete and has really helped us and has the body control to be able to make big plays down the field. If we put the ball in the air and give him a 50-50 ball, he gives us a chance to win that. Like I said, Cooper Sloan has really come on, as a kid who hadn't played that position very much in the past, and I think he's developed a ton
Mhm.
in our time. So, and I think we've got a lot of rotational players that will help us. Ryan Chapman will help us. Ethan will help us a lot as well. So we've got a lot of rotational players there at the receiver spot to where we can keep everybody fresh. I think that'll go a long way because not only do they have to catch the ball, but they've got to be able to
Yes.
block for us.
Yeah, when we talked about the offense, now we'll just transition into defense. I mean, we talked about your guys up front, so just talk about the I guess the linebackers, and then we'll talk about the secondary after that, I guess.
Yeah, on the linebackers, Caden Branham, he's kind of the leader out there on the defense. He calls the defensive sets, calls our strength calls, and does all that stuff. So he's kind of uh, the quarterback of the defense, setting everybody up, getting everybody in the right position. Jonah actually plays safety also, and he puts everybody in the correct calls for our coverages and make sure we're aligned correctly if there's a trip set or any of those kind of things. So Jonah helps us there in the secondary. Linebackers, like you said, we're a two-way team, so a lot of the same names.
Yeah.
You've got Tyler and Brett are those outside linebackers who have that versatility to cover and also, uh, set the edge on the run game. You have Cooper Slone again at corner, who's become really a shutdown corner. Uh, we have Jackson Camp at safety. I think we talked a minute ago about Ethan, and Ryan, both play at corner. Uh, and they've done a really good job, come a long way in their development. Um, not as they may not have as much experience, so last year might have been a little bit of growing pains for them. They got to play some last year, and I think it's helped. It might have been, like I said, painful growth last year, but this year
Yeah.
it's going to pay dividends, I think.
Yeah, and before I guess I'll ask you about special teams because sometimes people overlook special teams and how important that is. If you're solid on special teams, that's usually an extra weapon. And sometimes two-way, you don't see a lot of teams, with a very depth and they don't try to kick as much. What is your style? Because sometimes you see everybody just go for two every time. Sometimes they just kick it out of bounds because they don't even try to kick it long because they're afraid of what has happened. What is your philosophy there? Because or if you don't want to share too much of it, that's your prerogative because I guess other coaches, I guess, are still figuring you out as well. So, just wanted to throw that out there. So, however you want to deal with it.
No, yeah, I don't mind to share. We believe in, or my belief on it, and I think all the coaches on staff would agree. Special teams is a chance to you know, get an advantage, get some extra possession, some ways like that. So for us, the types of teams we play, the type of uh, clock management that a lot of these teams play, will run. Like if you see a lot of these teams are run heavy, you may not get as many possessions. So special teams is really important.
Yes.
If you can get 2 points rather than a PAT, that may be beneficial in a game where you only get 6 possessions or
Mm,
whatever the case may be. So for us, situationally, I think we're built to be able to go for two. I
mhm,
think situationally, we probably will go for two some. Uh, I think Jonah, from what I've seen, Jonah and Jackson both can punt.
mhm.
So I think we're going to be okay on that. And kickoff, they both can kick. So I think we're not in a position where we're forced to kick it out of bounds or any of those things. I think we've got good enough players to be able to run down and cover kicks and do all those things. So we've been working on that. When we're going to have some special teams periods to really try to put us in a position where that gives us an advantage, because I think in a game, in the types of games we play around here with a lot of running the ball,
Yeah.
you may not get enough possessions to try to not use that to your advantage. You got to try to use that to your advantage somehow.
Yeah, and we mentioned depth a little bit earlier. Just talk about how your approach is with creating depth because you never know what's going to happen this season. You always need it. There's not enough of it for a
Yeah.
2A team. Do you use JV? How is it that you kind of try to develop guys in case you got to throw somebody in, like you need a freshman who hasn't got many reps? How do you kind of develop depth throughout the season? Because I think at a 2A school that's an important thing, and each coach is different how they kind of approach that, so
Yeah, it's become more of a challenge over the years. Kids have when we were in school, there was maybe less to compete with in
Mhm.
terms of interests. These days, there's just a lot more that kids might want to go home and do rather than stay for football practice. So if they're not getting playing time,
Yeah.
so you got to find ways to get those kids playing time. We try to get as many. We've tried to get as many JV games scheduled as possible, with the caveat when we schedule these JV games that we're low on numbers and you know we don't know what kind of JV team we're going to have. So,
Mhm.
we talk to these teams that we're going to play against and try to have that understanding of let's use this for development, so that's one thing we're trying to do, rather than cutting JV, which I've
Yes.
seen teams do.
Yes, yes.
We don't want to cut JV as much. We would rather still do it, but look at it from the perspective of, maybe we're not going out there and trying to win JV games as much as we are trying to just work on what we're trying to work on and improve our own process, so to speak, for those young guys. But another thing for depth, we're just looking for positional versatility. So if a guy maybe could play outside receiver, but he also could play
Yes.
that slot receiver or wing or
Yeah.
whatever, situationally, we want to be able to teach them both of those positions so that if somebody goes down, you might have to shuffle,
Yes.
and you've got the ability to shuffle. That's the biggest thing for us right now.
Yeah, that was a great answer. I think every coach's philosophy is different. I always like hearing their philosophy on that because most of our schools are smaller schools,
Yeah.
unless you got like Johnson Central and sometimes powerful with big numbers. But most schools are schools, so that's why I always like to ask about that. But kind of getting into the season, just kind of talk about first week of season. I know right now it's probably about a month away. You probably think, oh, I ain't even thinking about that, but it'd be here before you know it. Like, how are you getting your guys ready from now to then? Like, is it just each day you're just working on something new, and then once you get into exhibitions and it starts becoming reality, kind of what's your philosophy from now to then? Because you still got a little bit of prep time and stuff.
Yeah, but like you said, it creeps up on you. It comes up quick. So for us, we've tried to be as organized as possible with making each day have a purpose. So for us, when we schedule a practice, we try to schedule what we're going to do during that practice with the goal of improving in some facet, right? So
Yeah.
like maybe this day we're trying to work on um making sure we're good at base blocks up front. So we schedule, we try to run as many plays that are built around base blocks as possible in that day
Yes.
of practice. And we just keep working that way and try to develop certain skills during each practice. And hopefully over the next few weeks we can improve those skills. Then when we get to those scrimmages and those games, we turn it more into a true game week prep,
Yeah.
which is a little bit different than what we're doing now. So, that's kind of how we have been able to structure it so far. I think it's been good. The kids have picked up on the offense quick that way, defensively as well. Most of the kids know that we haven't changed a lot on the defensive side, uh, but for the most part, um, the offense they've picked it up really fast. I think um, getting live reps in those first couple scrimmages
Yeah.
will be really, really helpful. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
And piggybacking off that before I get back into the season, how do you treat 707s? I know some people can just go out there and have fun with it and just want to get a few reps and see who can make some catches or see what they can do. Like, how do you treat a 707? I know some teams, they come out and they throw a lot, so they're working on a lot of their base offense. Whereas other teams, they very rarely throw, and then they're just getting guys reps to prepare if they do have to throw it. Kind of what's your philosophy of those things too? Because everybody's different with all that stuff.
Yeah, it's always a tricky thing because like I said, we went to EKU 7-on-7. I mean, you had teams, running empty formations and doing all these things that maybe they do that,
Yeah.
but we don't, most of the time. So we didn't do that, right? We just tried to run our base stuff and stuff that we might run in certain situations. So
Yeah.
like we try to make our 7-on-7s as situational as possible. So if ideally, like that was a competitive 7-on-7, I understand, what teams are trying to do, but usually like when we match up with a local team just to do 7-on-7 to get work in,
Mhm.
a lot of that's like, okay, I want to see what this coverage would look like against whatever. And we work together to
Yeah.
set that up, or, you know, we want to work passing the ball in the red zone or something
Mhm.
like that. So, we try to work as much situational offense as possible and situational defense as possible in that situation to where you're not seeing stuff you wouldn't normally see in a game.
Mhm.
Ideally, then nobody keeps track of your 7-on-7 record, but they do keep track of your regular season record.
Yes,
So that's what we really wanted to develop.
absolutely. And getting back into the season a little bit, you got to experience it as a player of the Pike County Bowl. I know that's week 2, Martin County. I think that you guys have played each other for the last few years. That's developed into a nice little rivalry game. It's a fun one. It seems like every year it comes down to a play here or there. Just kind of talk about coming back as a coach and being able to experience this as a coach, and what a kickoff it is for to open a season. Big atmosphere, a lot of excitement. I mean, how are you gonna kinda enjoy this as a coach? I mean, I'm sure you remember it as a player, so, kinda how you gonna come back in and kinda use this as a, I guess, a teaching moment for these kids because that atmosphere and that big game feel, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids, as a lot of coaches may not understand the Pike County Bowl, they didn't, maybe weren't in it or whatever the
Mm,
case may be. But to me, as a player, it was always a big deal. We
mhm,
loved it. It was the biggest, atmosphere game for us on our schedule. Uh, I was always really excited about it. I'm excited about it as a coach for a lot of reasons. One, Martin County is a tough opponent, a really good team. They always are. They were always,
mhm.
I mean, even when they were Sheldon Clark,
Yeah,
years ago, they were
that
about as physical as anybody you would play. Uh, and so we know that's going to be a challenge for us. And I always like to have those early season challenges to help
yes.
develop your mentality as a team. So that's one big factor. I've never played at the new Belfry Stadium. I was in the old Vic
Yeah.
Run when I played, so it'll be interesting to go up there and play for the first time as a coach. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know it's a big event. Um, there's a lot of good matchups across the whole Pike County Bowl from what I've seen. Looks like a really interesting weekend, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think the kids, I know they think it's a big event and they're excited about it. They've been talking about it. Uh, and for us, it's one of those, if like you always tell the kids, if you can't get, yourself pumped up for this game, what are you doing?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's always a fun one. We always ask about that because we do the Pike County Bowl magazine. Hopefully, this interview you'll see QR coded. I mentioned that before. Hopefully, it'll be there. So, other than that, just talk about the rest of the season because you mentioned Martin County is a physical team. Once you get into district play, you're going to see a lot of physical teams. I mean, this two-way football is in the mountains has always been known as a physical thing. So it's going to be a grind once you get into district play. Just talk about how important it is to, that toughness week in, week out. I mean, I think that's what, usually separates the really good teams from the good teams, in that district. So kind of talk about that if you can.
yeah, I mean, year to year, from what I've seen over the years as a player, as coach, just as a spectator in this area, um, if you look at the 2A level, you got the Prestonsburgs, the Belfries, the Breathitts, the Sheldon Clarks, right? All those
Mhm.
guys, the common denominator is always they're good up front, very physical,
Yeah,
right? So you've got to see that, and I think it's good to see it early in the season. When I coached in Tennessee, we always tried to front load the schedule with a tougher opponent for that reason, right? Everybody else is a little easier to deal with when you've had to deal with the
yeah,
big boys in the beginning. So I think that's important. And if you want to build a successful program, you can't shy away
absolutely.
from the tough challenges. I mean, you look at the district as it is with Belfry
Mhm.
and Shelby Valley, and then you look at the way the district's going to be in future years. It's going to have Martin County, Prestonsburg,
Yeah.
Belfry, Shelby. I mean, there's
It's no easy
there's
games.
no easy games in the district moving forward. So I think that's what you want, right? In a way, you want that. You don't. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be bottom of the barrel. You want to build yourself at the top, and the only way to do that is to challenge yourself against that quality of opponent. So that's what we look forward to. We're not going to shy away from those types of teams. We're going to continue to schedule that type of opponent, and we're going to have to with the district as it is, but we were going to even if the district happened to be some other arrangement.
Yeah, and that last little bit, I'll let you go because I've taken up a lot of your time. Just kind of talk about this first season, what you want to get. I know you want to win every game. You're a competitor. I know that. But what are you looking for out of yourself and your team in this first season? What do you want to see this team do? Do you want to see it, gradually week to week get better and by the end of the season have a chance to get in the playoffs, make a run? Or is it just show up every week, be consistent, work hard, and try your best to improve? What's your philosophy on this first season? Because I think that's important for you to set your base and have something to build on in the future. I mean, always think that that's important.
Yeah, I mean, you get, at the end of the day, you're judged on your record, right? Your
Mm,
record, it is what it says it is, right? So, but what have to do is just control what we can control, and as our players can control their effort
mhm,
and their consistency in how they play, and that's what we try to focus on with those guys is don't stack bad days. So when we practice, we've got to stack good days
mhm,
and not have back to back bad days. Sometimes you're gonna have a bad day, but you can't have back to back bad days. All right. So if we continue to do that and improve, then we get out there on game day and we stack good plays back to back. You probably are going to win a lot of those games. But
yes.
you know the outcome. If I watch the film, I want the first play to be all out effort and consistent play. But I also want play 100 to be all out effort, consistent play. Every play's got to be the same, no matter the score, no matter the situation. I want our guys to play the same way every play. And I want teams to, when we go shake hands at the end of the game, I want the coach to say, "You guys were tough. You guys gave great effort. Your kids, were tough to play against, and they try really hard and they give max effort." I think if we do that, then the program will build. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, anything else you wanna add about, your time at Pike Central so far and or is this
It's
kinda
been it's been great. I've had the type of support that you really wish you could have. So I think, um, people have lived up to the expectation that you would want when you're a head coach. You take over and you hope you have the kind of administrative support, the kind of community support, and so far we've had that. And I think, um, if we continue to do what we intend to do, we'll continue to grow that support, and it's going to go well, and hopefully we'll add another successful program to this region.
That's awesome.
We have
Great
some good.
answers. Yeah. Another great interview with Coach Sloan. We'll be hopefully you'll see him on Friday nights. Hopefully I'll get to interview him after some of the big wins and hopefully he has a great first season and continues to build Pike Central up. For Corey Vance, I'm Ray White, Coach Sloan. This is Unwired Appalachia. Check us out on our social medias. Like another attention to all coaches I would talk to. We're trying to get up with you. We want to talk to everybody. So hopefully somebody will see this, and then maybe if you see this and you ain't got up with us yet, call me or I'll be calling you. So we want everybody. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.